Better Business for Good TV. By small business owners, for small business owners.
Welcome to episode 12 of Better Business for Good TV. I'm Brenda Thomson.
In this interview, I talk with Jeanine Purdie from Business Credit Solutions and Repaid. Repaid is a debt collection agency, so as you can imagine, Jeanine is working in a particularly challenging environment during COVID-19, with many businesses struggling. Jeanine recaps on some of the legislation surrounding debtor management during the COVID-19 crisis, what COVID-19 has meant for her industry, and she shares her tips on what small businesses can do to minimise the risks and impacts of bad debts, both in the current situation and in more normal times.
This year has been on the back of quite a bad last year, can I say, because people are very quick to forget that we were struggling, particularly at the end of last year.
Yeah.
So, there was drought, bushfires, and then those poor people had coronavirus to deal with as well, at the start of 2020. So, then they had some social distancing and industry shutdowns and border closures, put on top of them as well.
It's been an absolute catastrophic 18 months really for business, and for the businesses who were in the bushfire or the floods or the drought affected areas, they've had layer upon layer upon layer.
They have, and I've got clients there and they just said, parts of their businesses are doing well, or that they might have a franchise. One part's going okay, others aren't, sort of thing. Yeah. So it really is location as well we're looking at within a state. So
yeah, I mean, if you're in WA now, you're probably feeling much better than if you're in Victoria right now.
Mind you, we've still got debtors in WA saying they're doing it tough, but with coronavirus, you just have to sort that out, don't you, with people and call them out on it.
Yeah, and I guess that's one of the things that you're having to do because this must be a time when you have to be so incredibly sensitive and empathetic, but at the same time, there will always, that's the fact of life, there will always be people who abuse the system.
That's right, and most people do have good intention to pay. They are well intentioned. Then there's always your serial debtors out there, and this is a great excuse for them, even though they're probably getting propped up by all the government stimuluses and grants and whatever else is happening at the moment, which I will go into. Yeah, so we've really just got to look at case by case. Yeah.
And I guess that leads into the question that we had here about how all of this has impacted your industry and what you're doing differently.
Yeah, well, the government stimuluses, obviously, as I mentioned before, JobKeeper, JobSeeker, early access to super, business grants, mortgage holidays, the moratorium on evictions and rental increases. Well, that has been increased till the end of December now. Yeah. So we've got to look at debtors and what they're receiving and how, what's their likelihood of getting our clients repaid. There's also been the temporary changes to the legal enforcement processes, which started on March 26th, and that's had a massive impact on us. So if a client with the creditor statutory demand, if they want to issue proceedings now, a statutory demand, that's been increased from $2,000 to $20,000. And instead of 21 days to attend to that, to address it, it's now 6 months. Same with bankruptcy. Yeah.
That's a massive pain on the person to whom the business to whom the money is owed. That could send a business out the door, even if their business was originally strong, if the person that they've supplied is now in a...
That's right.
Well, in fact, the business they've originally supplied doesn't even have to be in a dire situation, really, do they? It's like they only have to go, I don't have to. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. There's a ripple effect there. So we're waiting, that was 6 months. So the end of September, we're waiting, hopefully that will end and people are able to act. Because there's an awful lot of debt that was what we call pre-coronavirus that is in that basket that has to be addressessed.
Yeah, and of course, even though the debt was pre-coronavirus, that doesn't change the reality for the person who has to pay the debt, that now we're not in pre-coronavirus times.
Yeah, and this can be 2018 or 19 debt too, Brenda. So, this is really hard on people, and they've heard all the excuses, all the delay stories, and this happened, and they're basically being held up at the moment. Insolvent companies, I guess, are being artificially propped up by the government initiatives and the legal changes. So they are expecting a tsunami of insolvencies. Because at the moment, insolvencies are right down, sort of half of where they were this time last year.
Yeah. I remember you saying something to me the other day about somebody saying to you, how can you do your job in this environment? So how do you respond to that? How do you do your job in this environment?
Well, Brenda, we just have to keep going. It is unprecedented, uncertain times, and we are heavily guided by industry bodies who have also, they have had to look at what they are doing, and they have been fantastic. Our governing body, the Australian Institute of Credit Management, provides all sorts of education. As you mentioned before, they are encouraging talk to your debtors. Now there's never been a better time to really know what's happening in their business. Find out, who's your loan with, because obviously loans have been impacted. To be empathetic and to work with them, get them on a payment plan, and in the hope that, times will be better, or perhaps their business can pivot and do better. So we've got to look at all those things.
So it's really about being empathetic, supportive, and looking for a win-win, for a path forward that you hope will result in a win-win.
Yeah, we also use credit reporting bureaus, Creditor Watch, Ilion, which inform us on the industry defaults. So transport, admin services has been heavily impacted, with payment times being blown out to what was, I think, 10 days to 90 days. So that's really hard hitting for them. Also, the Victoria Chamber of Commerce and Industry, we listen to those webinars that are hugely attended. They're very valuable, and business leaders have been presenting, including the Treasurer of Victoria. So up to 1,000 people tune in to see what's happening, which have been fantastic. And it gives us that extra security that we are doing the right thing with our both clients and debtors.
So do you have some tips, some advice for, well, probably the advice you already give your clients, but some advice that every small business who has debtors in any respect or issues in has accounts receivable, have you got some tips and advice for them?
Well, absolutely. It goes right back, and we've spoken a lot in this series about engaging and onboarding. So those things are very important to have the right processes at the start. Do you automate for efficiency? Gone are the days of sending your invoices out late and in the mail. That is absolutely prehistoric. Invoice on the day if possible, and make sure everybody in your team is aware of how important, getting paid is, that cash is king. Have great paperwork. Now, we have a lot of debts, and people always ask us, can we add your costs onto the debt? Well, we can if your paperwork's right. So it is a really good investment at the start to update your terms and conditions to make sure there's what's called a default clause that can add any costs, legal costs, so forth. So if that does go legal, then you've got that piece of paper, which I always say is gold. And it's always those that have implications. For example, your Telstra bill, if you're 1 day late, next month $15 is slugged on the top. So, anyone who has those implications will be more likely to get paid sooner than those that don't. You need to know when to send to debt collectors as well. If it's old or over a certain days outstanding, could be 60 days, could be 90 days, might be sooner. Or if there's a dispute that you just can't handle, send it over to us. Third-party involvement is always good. And know when to stop credit or reduce your credit limit, particularly at the moment. You just don't want a tsunami of debt out there. And you just have to really make sure that you know what's going on. Now, we're hearing from credit managers who it's not only monthly reporting now to the CFOs or the CEOs, it's weekly or daily reporting.
Wow.
Yeah. So, that, as I said, cash is king. They need to really be onto it. The don't get emotional about a debt, and don't act impulsively, and don't, that always turns bad. You know, it always makes it ugly from the start, and we can tell when perhaps somebody has got emotional pre us taking on the debt. Don't ignore bad debt. You know, the check's not in the mail, can I say? And don't be afraid to get help. It's not sometimes it's a bit of a new process engaging external help, a debt collection agency. But once you've gone through it and you realise, yes, I can add the costs on. Why did I bother going through all this heartache when I could have handed it over? And yes, they got results, which is a good outcome. And I guess, Brenda, someone said to me, and it is so true, particularly in debt collection, it's not what you say that will be remembered, it's how you make them feel.
This interview was an extract from Better Business for Good TV, episode 12. To watch the full show or for other episodes, go to bb4g.tv.